Today, I'd like to share a few excerpts that I found quite helpful from Nikolai Veresov's 2021 article, Cultural Historical Theory and the Dialectics of Lower and Higher Psychological Functions. 1. 3 months before his death, Vygotsky continued to insist that the problem of higher psychological functions is the central problem of the whole psychology of man. Vygotsky, 1960, p. 364. This calls into question the widespread popular belief that in the last years of his life, Vygotsky abandoned, or even simply rejected, the ideas of the cultural historical theory developed in 1927-1930. However, based on Vygotsky's original texts, we could conclude that at all stages of the development of CHT, the process of development of higher psychological functions remained the main subject matter. In that report, Vygotsky explains the relations of higher and lower psychological functions and gives the clear answer. Higher psychological functions are special functional systems that are not a direct continuation or development of an elementary function, but represent a whole in which elementary psychological functions exist as one of the instances that make up the whole. Vygotsky, 2005, p. 13. The lower functions, of course, are involved as integral components of the higher ones. However, lower functions in no case determine the composition of a higher function, due to the fact that the higher functions have a different nature and origin. Moreover, having become an instance in the composition of a new whole, lower functions begin to work according to the laws of this new whole. 2. What we see here is an appeal to the historical aspect, to the metamorphosis, the emergence of a new quality in the course of development, and the irreversibility as the dialectical characteristics of the process of development. Development is not a purely mechanical change, water, steam, ice, but the constant change leading to an irreversible qualitative leap. Here we see Vygotsky's first step towards understanding the intermediary theory in psychology as a theory of historical development, which will be further elaborated in most of the main writings on CHT. If we accept this message and take CHT as a kind of intermediary theory where, on one hand, all concepts are being formulated in direct dependence upon general dialectics, and on the other hand, they are being used as psychological concepts, we then might take a new perspective for the rethinking this theory using the lens of dialectics. This fully applies to the problem of lower and higher functions. The relations and interactions of lower and higher functions can be understood only through the revealing of the dialectical character of the process of their development. This should be explained as a developing unity of opposites which includes qualitative metamorphosis and irreversibility as its main characteristics. Or even better, the psychological analysis should go beyond the visible phenomena psychological functions per se. It should be able to find and disclose the internal dialectics in the development of the dialectical unity of lower and higher functions. This new way, Vygotsky suggests, starts from the critical revision of the existing model. For general psychology, the lower and higher functions were seen as a sort of two-story construction where, together with mechanical memory, logical memory was differentiated as its higher form, voluntary attention was added above involuntary attention, creative imagination was added above reproductive imagination, thinking and concepts rose as a second story above figurative thinking. Lower feelings were symmetrically supplemented with higher feelings, impulsive volition with foresight. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 6, 7. For Vygotsky, the classical and widespread two floors model was an example of the absence of dialectical understanding of development. The weakness of this model comes from the inability to explain the origins of higher psychological functions. The second story is of unknown origin. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 6. 3. The unity of lower and higher psychological functions as functional system might be correctly understood within two lines of development which exist as a dialectical unity and at the same time are dialectical opposites. Historically, phylogenesis, these two lines of development are 1. The process of biological evolution of animal species, leading to the appearance of the species, Homo sapiens, as a biological type, and 2. The process of historical development by means of which the primordial, primitive man became cultured. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 15. The difference between the two is that biological evolution is related to the appearance of new organs and the structure of the body, whereas the process of historical cultural development is an adaptation by creating artificial organs and tools. Tools of labor and speech are the best example here, and therefore by appearance of cultural forms of behavior through mastering of cultural tools. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 16. In the individual history of child development, ontogenesis, these two lines are merged and form a single, although complex process. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 15. As dialectical opposites, they create a unity and mutually penetrate each other and form a process of social biological formation. Here we see how the idea of the necessity of including the historical aspect, which was formulated in Vygotsky's notebooks in 1926 in a seed form, was further developed within the theoretical system of SHT. 4. Higher psychological functions cannot be separated from the lower functions. They are related dialectically within the unity of two lines of development. In this, as Vygotsky says, we are inclined to see the greatest and most basic uniqueness in the mental development of the human offspring, which, with respect to structure, makes the development incomparable to any other similar process. This is where the basic difficulty of the whole problems lies. Vygotsky, 1997b, p. 19. In relation to this, Vygotsky's notebooks provide with an extremely interesting note. The higher and lower functions are not built in two floors. Their number and names do not coincide. But neither is our previous conception correct, that the higher function is the mastery of the lower one. Voluntary attention is the subordination of involuntary attention. For this also implies two floors, Zavershneva and van der Veer, 2018 p. 275. The previous conception about the role of the higher function to master the lower ones was rejected in 1932 and has been radically changed. Higher psychological functions are not the aids to master the lower ones, but to master man's own behavior. Vygotsky, 1997b, pp. 242-243. This contradicts to the popular opinion which was nicely summarized by Daniels. Vygotsky's suggestion was that mastery of a psychological tool and, through it, mastery of a natural mental function are involved in the development of a lower function to a higher stage. Daniels, 2008, p. 26. However, the dialectical understanding remains incomplete without disclosing qualitative changes in the process of development. In other words, an analysis should include what are the quantitative and what is the most important qualitative characteristics of this unity, and how this unity obtains its unique quality. Excerpts completed. Today, I have shared 4 different excerpts from Nikolai Veresov's 2021 article, Cultural Historical Theory and the Dialectics of Lower and Higher Psychological Functions. The excerpts leave somewhat of a cliffhanger. I recommend reading the whole article because the following sections titled Development and Metamorphosis and Negation and Sublation address this cliffhanger. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a nice day.